Thank you. Next up, we have the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff,
Good afternoon.
please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of council. I'm Sheriff Jewel Williams of the City and County of Philadelphia. Certainly, we get the opportunity every year to come before this body. This year, I will tell you that we're not asking for an increase. I will tell you that we have continued to improve the collections of the city delinquent tax fees. We now hold we've been holding over 72 sheriff sales this year. We've handled over 27,000 delinquent properties. This year before I took office, the city was getting about $27 million. Since I've been in office, we've now collected over $60 million in delinquent tax monies. We've shortened the time of the time of sheriff sales properties when they're sold. We are now going from 120 days to less than 20 days to have all the process completed. In the past, there was no effort to find people who was owed money. With our DART unit, last year we located 140 people and we returned $2.1 million to them. Over the last 6 years, we've returned over $10 million to the public, and that is money that is owed to the public. And we feel very good about that because that's mainly a second chance for some people. As you know, our major responsibility is courtroom security. We've transported over 100,000 prisoners last year. Thankfully, we have not lost a prisoner. 2 years ago, we was asked to take over the warrant unit, which the warrant unit members of that unit in the FJD did not have training, did not have certificates of civil rules of procedure. We've now completed training for at least half of those members, and now they are deputy sheriff officers. We've arrested over 220 fugitives, and we enforced over 800 protections from abuse orders, and we continue to do live protections from abuse arrests. And that is when you come to the Criminal Justice Center, particularly if there's a family with children, we make sure that that family gets a ride back to their home to remove that person, male or female, who's a part of the protection from abuse order. And that is thanks to Councilman Greenlee, who gave us those numbers of the lack of enforcement, and we continue to make that happen. We've reduced the witness intimidation by getting involved with the courts and cell phone program. And that is taking cell phones from the public and put them inside a bag that covers it, and it snaps it and it closes it so that witnesses are not being intimidated when they go to court. We've over 3,500 people daily are inside the courthouse and back and forth during the course of that day. I can tell you that we've collected over 25 cell phones to go inside those bags. So we are keeping the intimidation of witnesses down. We're keeping the fights and the arguments and the disagreements that's in and around the courthouse and the subways and the parking lots. One of our biggest challenges, and we found a way to secure City Hall. We're now working to secure City Hall, which is one of the number 2, we believe, unsafe courthouses in the country. And that is why the Sheriff's Office is working very diligently to hire 35 new deputies. Right now we're up to about 20 people. We've paid for about 20 deputies thus far so they can start securing and patrolling City Hall. This budget before you will meet our increase of our demands, but we request support from council with not asking for no increase of funds from council. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Sheriff, first I want to thank you for the program that was enacted with the gun locks and the partnership that's been formed among a number of individuals. It's been quite successful. As you know, when we go out, and I was like pretty amazed when we kicked it off last summer.
Yes.
We went to a couple of locations. Actually, I think Councilman Jones, we went in an area out in your area, and I know Councilwoman Sanchez, and a couple of other areas, and you know, and I was heightened by the fact that so many people were actually coming to get the gun locks. But I also was somewhat concerned because there's a whole lot of people with guns out here.
Yes.
You know, particularly I shouldn't be surprised, but there were a lot of elderly individuals who had come to the tables to get the gun locks, and essentially they were talking about their grandchildren coming to their households to spend the night, and they wanted to make sure it was safe and secure. So I want to thank you so much for your aggressive work on that, and look forward to continuing in that process. And I guess we're bringing on the daily news now as a part of that initiative.
Mr. President, we've given out over 3,500 gun locks and continue to give them out. And thanks to the partnership with the Philadelphia Daily News and the Philadelphia Inquirer, the program, if you have a gun, get a lock. And we take the phone calls. We sometime, if a person is unable to come and get a lock, we will deliver them while our guys are out serving warrants. So it's a partnership, and thank you, Mr. President, for your participation and council, because if you save one life, you've saved the family. And,
that's right.
And that's what we believe in.
Yeah. And I also want to thank you for helping us with security during our council session. We have had some interesting times in this chamber, and while my guys are good guys, our Sergeant of Arms have done a great and capable job, but at the end of the day, they are not licensed to carry any type of weapon, so some people don't respect certain authority unless it's, you know, having those badges and those other things that ensure people that it will be a safe environment. That recently we had to ask your guys to take some action in quietly removing a number of individuals who were determined that we were not going to be allowed to have a session. So I really appreciate your opportunity, and that leads me to one of the questions in your testimony, and you briefly referenced it about additional security for City Hall. We in City Hall kind of take for granted that everything's going to be okay, but in today's times, I mean, you just never know. I mean, I can recall the last time we in the government, we took it kind of serious. I think it was a council person in Baltimore was shot, and all of a sudden there was this push to come up with a security plan, but nothing ever happened. And while we appreciate people down at the front door, you know, getting your name, I think they maybe even take your picture, at the end of the day, there is no check on those individuals. Can you kind of tell me what actually happened with that plan? I mean, it was a conversation, and I know there was a lot of analysis done with the last administration, I think.
Well, right now, our chief deputy and our chief inspector, Lamb and Taylor, we've been working with John Kevaney, who's a former captain in the sheriff's office, and we've done the surveys, we've done the analysis, and as I said in the beginning, we now have 10 sheriff deputy officers who's going through training May 1. We just secured additional funds so we can pay for the 20 deputies, and we would envision sometime in September we would have 3/4 of a complement of deputies who will be here to secure the building. So the surveys that they had in the past, we utilize them, and the ideas that we're coming up with public property to secure this building. That's our goal, and all the plans and the ideas they had in the past, we finally got the opportunity to pull all that together and come up with a great plan. So it's moving and working. Although you don't hear about it because there's some security issues that we don't want to disclose, but the process is moving.
Right. So I guess, and I actually had the occasion to talk to a number of the judges, particularly those in leadership, about concerns about this building, a building where we actually have courtrooms, where judges do preside, and I do believe that under the law, if in fact there are courtrooms, there's certain limitations. I actually had a conversation with one of the solicitors today about the ability to carry guns in publicly owned buildings, and I think there's actually something moving through the legal system that municipalities cannot prohibit individuals from carrying weapons in the publicly owned buildings. I don't know how that's going to work out, but at the end of the day, there are some concerns by some of the judges in the courtrooms, and why it may be civil cases. Sometimes civil cases can get pretty heated. Would you suggest, I need to put you on the spot here, that there be some sort of a security measure similar to what we have for our council sessions? We, at the end of each hallway during council hearings, we have security measures and metal detectors. But the simple reality is, if somebody wanted to do something to somebody, they just, catch them at the office or catch them in the hallway on the way to the chambers. Would you suggest that we enhance the security measures on the first floor at the points of interest for the public?
Certainly. We require, if you're in a courtroom, that you surrender your gun to a lockbox. And the lockbox, we send them over to the Criminal Justice Center until we're able to build out gun safety lockbox here in the building. Our concern is, while there is a proceeding going on, that you don't carry a weapon inside the courtroom. And if we see or hear about someone with a gun, if they have a gun permit, we recommend them to come over to the Justice Center to surrender their gun until they finish the business here. As far as the security, a part of the security plan is to lock down the building in a sense where people would have to go through metal detectors and X-ray machines so that we can look for weapons. And as well as explosives, and we have, for that reason, we have a K9 dogs who patrol this building. Also, we have the bike unit who patrols in and around this building, particularly as the end of the day, because you have a lot of civil cases, and those cases don't finish out until 4:30, 5 o'clock. So we have the bike patrol in and around City Hall. To fully answer your question, it is my recommendation that wherever that you can put a metal detector or an X-ray machine, that you have it for the safety of the public, and as well as council and the people who come in and out the building.
Similar to the Capitol.
Very similar, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Chair recognizes Councilman Don.
Thank you, Council President, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just want to commend you and your department. I'd love to hear no new money is needed. I wanted to ask you a few questions, though. I know last year, I think it was, that you had some issues with getting fees raised over some, I think, legislation issues or justification of the fees. I was wondering where that stood at this point.
Well, I'll yield to our finance director, Mr. Ben Hilliard.
That's been resolved. The last fiscal year, council approved an increase in fees that we collect on behalf of the city. These are fees that had not been increased for 20 years. 1997 was the last time. Prior to our implementing the fees, which would have been in October, we heard that there were some concerns from the law department. It took a while to resolve, and there are members of council in your office, and very much included, who assisted in resolving those issues. They are resolved, and we will begin to increase the fees on the 1st of May, 2 weeks. And that will give us the revenue, the city the revenue, to pay for the 35 additional deputies that will be protecting this building.
That's great, by the way. That is a wake-up call to every department who has fees that are 5, 10, or 15, or 20 years old, or 30 years old, that we need to look at them and then update them to today's levels. That's great. Other question, pretty simple, is we have currently people buying delinquent properties, and is there any mechanism, we've had some cases where the people buying the delinquent properties are actually currently delinquent on their own taxes. Is there any way to prevent that? So to prevent someone who is currently delinquent from purchasing another delinquent property?
Joe Vignola, who is the undersheriff, that is within his purview. Go ahead, Joe.
Joseph Vignola, Vignola. Councilman, every individual, when they are the successful bidder at the sheriff's sale, is given notice that in order to complete the closing of that sale, or in other words, we call play balance on sale, has to bring to the sheriff's office, when they're bringing their balance on sale, a tax compliance certificate from the revenue department.
And that's on every transaction that occurs?
On every one.
Okay.
The exception would be, again, when property in a mortgage sale is sold back to the bank.
Okay.
But if it's a third-party sale, all tax sales are third-party sales, and even mortgage sales are third-party sales, the successful bidder has to provide, at the time they're paying the balance on sale, a tax compliance certificate issued only by the revenue department.
Okay, thank you. Again, I want to compliment you on financing internally your expansion. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, Joe Vignola was looking at that seat saying you're in his seat. He used to be the councilman here. Oh, Taubenberg, okay. He was where? Oh, I'm in his office? Oh, God. Uh-oh. I'm trying to keep it clean for you. I want to thank you and your staff for, I've been here for a number of budget sessions now. Each year, you identify a problem, and you work on a solution, and then you implement it. You can't ask for better evolution in a department than that. I remember fiscal controls was an issue, and people not getting their money back, and now you turn that into a good point within the operation of the Sheriff's Department, so I'm thankful for that. Particularly, I remember also when the Justice Center was built, all of the problems where defendants and people accused of crimes were scared to death. They were scared to death to ride the same elevators, leave the same time, people taking pictures of them, putting them on Facebook, calling them snitches when they were witnesses. All of those things, you looked at that problem and figured solutions to. So I'm appreciative of that being involved in the whole public safety end. Collections better, distribution of money better, sheriff sales, collections, and distribution, disposal of properties better. I'm impressed. Some of the things, though, that you've mentioned to me as ideas to enhance service and to save the city money, I think it might be time for you to explore. You were talking about, at one point when we had a problem with bouncers, not knowing the rules of engagement, not being able to conduct themselves accordingly, being trained by the Sheriff's Department, and I wanted to know if those things are still on your radar to do. You had talked about, and I actually listened to you, talked about in big events dealing with traffic control and other things to augment what the city of Philadelphia does in a cost-effective manner. And one in particular that I really would like you to put high on your priority list is witness protection. Unfortunately, all of us wind up in a situation where one of our constituents is the victim of a crime, and sometimes a witness of a crime. And at times, particularly in areas in our districts, the proximity to the perpetrator and the victim is so close that getting them to court and other things like that is a problem. People are afraid. Is there a role for the Sheriff's Department in that regard, not just in the courtroom, but getting people to and from?
Well, thank you for the questions. The answer on the bouncers issue is that we have a lot of people who have Act 235 and they carry weapons, and they have a lot of folks call themselves agents or security officers at nightclubs. And if they don't have the proper training, it could be a very traumatic incidents could happen. And therefore, we are asking if we were able to, the Philadelphia Sheriff's Office, that we would train folks on use of deadly force. We would train them, and a fee, obviously would be a fee for the training, and the fee would come to the city of Philadelphia and to the Sheriff's Office. And it's really important that you train security officers, particularly if they're carrying guns, because they could be mistaken by police officers or sheriffs while we're out serving warrants because of the lack of training that they have in carrying guns. So we propose that idea. We have people in Harrisburg working on the legislation to see if we can get it to become state law. And we brought this before council. The other issue on witness protection, our office is prepared to pick up witnesses and take them to and from the courthouse. And if we were ordered by the courts, we would do it. We would do it anyway. But it would be great for us to implement a program that could assist in witness protection.
So it's within your purview to do
Yes.
now?
Yes.
Okay.
Whenever we're ordered by the courts, then it's my phrase I use: you call, we haul. If the court orders it, we'll do it.
Got it.
Now to the traffic. If there is a dedicated traffic lane on 95 or the expressway to move buses from the county jail to the courthouse, it could save a lot of time. Overtime for me, it would save a lot of time for the courts, because that means that we don't have to wait on 95 for an hour, hour and a half coming from the county jails to the local courthouse.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sheriff, thank you. And, you know, to echo what Councilman Jones had pointed out, you know, the progress and reforms that you've set in place is quite remarkable in a short period of time when it comes to the finances. Good job to you and your staff for one, acknowledging, recognizing, and creating a plan of attack and actually, making it happen. That restores a lot of our confidence in what you do every day. So that's why you're the boss. Council President and I always have this conversation about the traffic on 95, so I certainly understand that. We'll talk offline. I mean, my district's up in the Northeast, so I trek it every single day, and it is it's something that maybe we can work on together. If it's not a state highway issue, we might be preempted, but I do recognize that as a problem. I have a couple questions, if I could ask Mr. Vignola to come back up to the table. Councilman, how are you?
Very good, Councilman. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. So, Sheriff Sales, just a couple technical questions that I think comes up every budget process in a hearing. How many do we do on an average a month, and what are your goals, and are we meeting our goals for sheriff sales?
We do mortgage sales and tax sales. The tax sales are broken down into 3 different names, but they're basically delinquent tax sales. Those delinquent tax sales now have been increased to 4 times a month. It is the city's goal as the plaintiff in tax sales to bring 200 new properties per sale per month. So that's 800. In addition to that, we've been averaging a little under 400 mortgage sales a month. These are new properties. In any given sale, about 30% of the properties listed for sale during that sale are sold. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean 30% of the 200 new, because in addition to that, there's probably 200 to 300 on the list. We're listing every sale 500 properties. So on a tax sale, we're selling maybe 150 properties at a time. And on a mortgage sale, most of them go back to the bank, a similar amount.
So we had a goal of 600, all right, a couple of years ago, trying.
That is correct, and we met that goal, and the city added another sale.
And they added another sale.
And we're talking about
we had 2, now we have 3.
4 tax sales.
4 tax sales.
And we're talking new proproperties, Councilman,
New properties, in addition to the 150.
in addition to what's been carried over.
And so 30 are listed as, 30% are being sold above and beyond of the new or old, did you say?
Of all the properties listed for sale of that given
The
day.
combination of mortgage and taxes? Or
Just
of that day?
Of that day, because they're discrete sales. So if we have 500 properties listed for sale, about 150 on the tax sale will go.
Great. Are you having any issues with, okay, let me ask it this way. Are you at capacity for the amount of properties that you take to mortgage or tax or mortgage sheriff sales?
No, we're not, but the lawyers and the court system may be.
That's what I'm getting to. So, we've had this conversation before, and you're very, detailed when it comes to explaining, at least offline, what the process is, how many sales. We're just waiting, right? So the sheriff's department is just waiting for the law department to move on it, or revenue to get to the law, and law move to the courts. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you may not have the particular details or not, but where is the backlog? Where is the jam? Where do we need the movement? Is it over in law, or is it revenue getting to law? The court has 3 days a week set aside for sheriff sales, is that correct?
Yes. Yes. For where the city's the plaintiff to collect, to ask for judgments.
Right.
And now
and the private side is one of those days where they can do more.
Correct. As the sheriff said, if you order, we'll haul them. If you bring the writs to us, we have the capacity to list the property, property for sale. The situation that we're confronted with is there's a whole slew of steps that the law department has to go through, to get it ready for the petition to get the judgment.
Right.
And then the court only has so many capacity to hear so many cases during the day. And if it wasn't for the fact that a lot of the judgments, the P&Rs, petition rules are default, we would have a lot less.
Right.
If they're litigated.
So, to your knowledge, is the court, when they have their listings, are they filled?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
they are. Right,
Yes.
So the courts are filled.
Yes.
All right, so maybe there's so they could actually add another day if
Again, that
I
discussion.
don't know what their capacity is, but
Yeah.
it would be
Well,
helpful to move things along if they had.
That
if you had
discussion
enough-
has to be had between the city administration and the court administration,
There's
to schedule
no
that.
question.
Right. The only thing that I could say on behalf of Sheriff Williams is, we have the capacity, to go from 200 new properties a day to 300 new properties a day.
I know the answers before I ask the
Right.
question, so I just wanted to publicly do a process of elimination, so we all
here's-
know where we are.
Here's the other side. If you're looking for it as a raiser of tax revenues, the more you have, the more supply you have, the less demand, the lower the price is. But the upside is that if we get a property sold at sheriff's sale, and we're talking about tax sales, right? That property, which has not been paying taxes, now has a new owner which will pay taxes on it. So we may not collect the full arrearages. We may not collect 60 cents on the dollar. We only collect 10 cents on the dollar. But going forward with the new owner, we're going to collect 100 cents on the dollar.
And the problem that we have and have had for years, and I know we've done a good job moving as we increased our amount of sales per month. We have a surplus of, with the combination of all our departments, in thousands, and that hasn't changed. So I think the combination with the restructuring with some of our housing and with land bank and some of the new processes that we have, I think now's the time. I just want to point out that we might be able to move some of these surplus properties that are either tax or mortgage.
And another
with
thing-
with the people protections that we have to
yeah.
keep people in the houses, because we don't really want to have people removed from their occupied house either.
Yeah, that's another point I was going to make. That's a problem. Sometimes you're penny wise and pound foolish. Yes, we sell the property at tax sale. The property is occupied, but the person is not paying taxes. Now, all of a sudden, it's a new owner. They get evicted. Then our social service costs go up on the other side because now we have a homeless situation.
Well, the great part about what you do, what the courts do, what some of our departments in this legislative body is, they really listen and understand people's situations, and not having them being put out in the street is important. So how do we not do that first, and then we, retract from there?
Yeah, but every time, Councilman, every time that a property is posted, there's a brochure that we put when they're posting. And no place else in the country do they do this. This brochure that we put with that posting, it tells you how you can get help. It tells you what social programs that's available, community legal services, corporation of aging. It tells the public where they can go and get help. And because we understand the issue of people being put out of homes and homelessness, so a part of our program is to inform the public where they can get help.
You got it. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Just quickly, Sheriff, I didn't want to interrupt your conversation with Councilman Jones, but on the issue of bouncers, there is a law, which I sponsored a few years ago, that all bouncers are supposed to be trained, and be certified as being trained. The problem, we've had a lot of problems with that. One, getting the training done, the bouncers understanding that, all that kind of thing. So if the sheriff's office can be one of those groups that can certify, I think it could
Yes,
help a lot.
Because see, Act 235 only gives them the training to receive the certification to carry that weapon from home
Right.
to work. But what you find is that you have bouncers and people who work at these clubs, and
Right.
they're out to 2, 3, 4 in the morning.
Right.
So they need additional training on the
Absolutely.
use of deadly force.
Right.
They need to have some social skill trainings.
Oh, yeah.
Because, if they're, tapping the juice and carrying that weapon, that's a problem.
Yeah,
And a part of that, we would provide some kind of monitoring where we would actually survey the community where you have a high amount of bouncers and make sure that folks are in compliance.
Yeah, that was great, because when we first put it in, there was literally guys being thrown out windows and that kind of stuff.
Right.
If we can cut that down, it would be a good idea.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Councilman Green.
Thank you, Chairman Greenlee. Good afternoon, Sheriff Williams. Pleasure to hear your testimony and all the fine work that your officers do in your department in keeping our city buildings safe, as well as the transportation they provide for people who are in the correctional system. Wanted to touch base on a recent initiative that you have regarding cell phones, and I know Councilman Jones talked about it, and from my experience as a former assistant district attorney, that was always a challenge and concern regarding intimidation. Beyond just the issues regarding cell phones, are there other ideas and suggestions that you have from a safety perspective that we can try to use and implement that could be a recommendation to First Judicial District or other people in law enforcement to try to cut down on some of the intimidation factors and just other things that happen in our court system?
Well, thank you for bringing this up, because we find that there's a lot of incidents that happens after people leave the courthouse, and again, that's why we have the bike patrol who actually escort people to parking lots and to public transportation. We've been working with SEPTA police, and we have a dedicated radio where we communicate with SEPTA in the event there's a large crowd leaving the courthouse. We'll let them know what route they're in, what route they're traveling, to make sure that they get in the subway or the bus system and get out of Center City from in and around the courthouse, which provides, public safety. Some of the ideas and suggestions we have, along with the monitoring, that is to have people who will actually ride in the elevators and walk the hallways or the fire towers in the courthouses where we have high PR cases, where the public and where it may just be a lot, two families from certain areas, and we'll communicate with the district of where they live and where they're coming from, to let them know that court is over with. It was a decision that people may not agree with after a jury comes out with a decision. So we get that opportunity to work hand in hand, and I would agree we need to advance that and do more, because intimidation is a major factor. I mean, people don't want to come to court, and they don't want to be a witness, and if they're intimidated, that really makes people don't want to get involved. So that's some of the goals that we try to make the courthouse safe and in the surrounding areas of the courthouse. And not only do we do Criminal Justice Center, we do 1501, which is the juvenile courthouse, and then we have traffic court. And then we do the Weiner building, where you have incidents where people are just filing for claims to collect money. So, the sheriff's office, we do a lot. And with our unit and the protection from abuse orders, we try to stay on top of. And that's an issue that is that we need more help with. I mean, we need more manpower and more women power to make sure that the public, particularly people who need to have that protection from abuse orders, served. That is a big factor when you're dealing with domestic abuse.
And you mentioned the work you're doing in reference to trying to keep the exterior CJC safe. Do you also do that family court? Because from my experience, it's those family interactions, he said, she said, divorce proceedings, custody proceedings, that also can tend to lead to altercations and fights among family members, sometimes outside family court. So do you do the same thing at CJC that you try at family court as well?
Yes, we have a dedicated bike unit who's detailed to the juvenile courthouse. And around the juvenile courthouse is DHS, so there's child custody and child separation. That's the next alleyway away, and we have to put people outside there to make sure when that exchange is done, it's done without having an incident. So we do the same at 1501 Arch. We just haven't started the phone retrieval yet.
Thank you. Also, you've done a lot of leadership in reference to the issue of gun locks, and I've been now seeing new advertisements regarding gun initiatives and trying to educate, gun owners to be careful with their guns. And I've seen ads where you have young children who are looking like they're about to grab a gun, and trying to educate gun owners. how to keep their firearms safe and away from juveniles. In addition to the gun lock initiative that you've implemented, are there other ideas you have regarding gun safety that could be used, considering that one of the issues we have in this city, especially listening to the testimony just the other day from the police department, is in reference to theft of guns, the availability of guns in the city of Philadelphia, which is much different than a lot of other cities throughout the country. And so your initiative regarding gun locks is one way, but I'm curious if you have any other ideas in reference to promote gun safety.
Well, starting the gun lock program, and certainly we're glad to have the Philadelphia Daily News and Inquirer as a vehicle to get information out. Gun safety education, and that's why whenever we're out doing seminars and after church services, we do seminars and we have information out with brochures. I think the most important process is to educate the public on how dangerous guns are. And I think if you make it a part of community safety, where people should get involved in letting the family know when there's guns at their home, if you're going to spend the night out, over someone's house, that's a part of the conversation when you leave the phone number to say, we're going to step out for a couple hours. You need to say, well, we have guns in the home, they're locked up, they're secured, or you don't want the kids in the bedroom or whatever. I think information is so key to saving a life. I thought when we sat down with the Daily News and the Inquirer, and they agreed to help promote this gun safety program, I thought that was a step in the right direction of having a communication and a business partner, because it saved lives. If you can save one life, you've done it. You've done an amazing thing. And communications, conversations, and at some point we can hope to get business people to be a part of sponsoring radio commercials to remind people, if you have a gun, get a lock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just one other question I wanted to ask, and that is, when it comes to the wages, and I know these increased fees are going to cover the new hiring costs, are you also aware of what the fringe benefit percentage is for every dollar of wage?
It's about 42%.
42, is that including health?
Yes.
And including pensions?
That's
and
all
everything?
in.
42.
Yeah, that's a city standard.
Okay, so that the fees that you're raising also cover those fringe benefits?
Well, the fees will go toward the cost of the salary and the benefits. I would like to say there's going to be a one-for-one match, but we don't know till we collect all the fees to see how we do at the end of the year.
Okay, we'll come pretty close.
But the goal is to subsidize both the salary and the benefits for the 35 deputies.
Okay, so just to recap for the record, the administration says the fringe benefit cost is 87%, and the overhead of the city is another 37% on every dollar we pay in wage. The police department said the fringe benefits were 40%. The fire department said the fringe benefits were 49%. The pension board, or prison department rather, said it was 40, I think also 40 or 42%. And you're saying yours is how much?
We've been using 42, and
42.
we got that number from the budget office.
You got that from the budget office?
Yeah.
So why is yours 42 and the rest of the city employees is 87?
Good question to me, why isn't it 40? I don't know.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It'd be interesting if we all got together on the
Yeah,
number.
it'd be nice to have one number that's the same.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all the work you're doing.
And thank you for having us.
Sure.
We'll see you next year.
Yes, we'll be here.